I was 21 and I was a senior science technician, and I thought I want a challenge. So I joined the police. There was a call in the afternoon that there was a girl in the garden without a head, and her boyfriend believed that she was the devil. He cut her head off with a bottle, a beer bottle, and then he put the head in a bag and ran away with it. And one guy hadn't paid the money, so he's found dead in the house, sitting there, slashed open, and 2 cans of this particular lager were on his either side of him. I was sitting in the house watching TV, and I saw the things blowing up. And the next thing I know, I'm on a phone call. There's been a murder.
So today we are joined with David Swindle, former senior detective and crime expert. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Abby. I really appreciate you seeking me out while I'm in Sunderland with the makings of a murderer.
Amazing. I mean, I was actually at the show last night. I was fortunate enough to be there. It was unbelievable. I didn't know what to expect. Obviously, I'd heard the title Makings of a Murderer. But when you went down through different cases, and the kind of empathy you have for the victim side of things wasn't something I was expecting. I thought you were just going to be talking about almost, I wouldn't say glamorizing the serial killers, but that's kind of what I thought it was going to be about. But obviously, after you told us what kind of work you do with victims abroad and stuff like that, it was a whole lot more to it. So for people who don't know who you are, but are fascinated by crime, it's something that a lot of people are fascinated by at the moment. What got you into this?
Well, my background, you gave me an introduction there. I was a former senior detective. Yes, I was in the police for 34 years, and I dealt with literally hundreds of murder investigations. And I left the police in 2011, and it's a type of occupation that you really can't give up. You've always got it in your blood. You always feel strong about wanting to continue and to help others. And, sadly in the police, you do leave too early. They retire you early. And for me, I was fortunate. I was a senior officer. I could stay on a bit longer, 34 years. But after I left, I set up a small organisation, Independent Reviews, David Swindle Crime Solutions, helping families, looking at cases, cold cases, looking at other parts. And then it metamorphosised into Killed Abroad, dealing with killed abroad cases. People like Kirsty Maxwell, a young woman that died in unusual circumstances, unresolved circumstances, when she was in a room in Benidorm, and there was various other men there, and she was found dead. She climbed over, it looks like she climbed over the balcony. And there's all sorts of issues about that case where the police destroyed their clothing, the CCTV, all sorts of issues. And sadly for the family, Kirsty's family, that case is still unresolved. There's evidence, irretrievable errors made on it. And another one that I'm dealing with is the murder of a young guy in Lorette de Mar, Craig Mallon. So these are cases that I feel, families are let down by the government in the UK, who say we don't investigate or try to influence investigation in our country. So families are left there to try and find out about, translations. They've got to pay for it themselves. There's no one there to help them. And I thought I can help this by using my skills. So that's one thing I do, is the victims abroad side of things. I have a team of linguists that help with that. There's a website, victimsabroad.com. And social media is a big thing for me, because what we do with these cases, we buy the domains of the victims, like kirstymaxwell.com, craigmallon.com, and run everything in other languages and in English to appeal for witnesses, to try and help families get justice and
hopefully
influence
get people
authorities.
To come forward and
yes,
stuff like
yes,
that.
Because what you get is, I'm not a private investigator. I'm using my crime expertise skills and other people that have researchers to help influence it. So that's one aspect I do. But the other one that I do is media. I'm a media voice. I've done a few documentaries, true crime documentaries, and the one you were at last night is The Makings of a Murderer.
Unbelievable. I think you've got 130 show dates.
There's about 125 shows throughout the UK.
That is some going, like.
Yeah, the Makings of a Murderer, it's kind of, it started in February. It was launched in February in the Lowry in Manchester. What a venue, the Lowry Theatre in Media City. It was launched there. There was 1,200 people there, and that was the platform. And thereafter, we're in Liverpool, 1,200 people there. We're everywhere. I'm everywhere with us throughout the UK. I mean, 2 nights in Sunderland, Amazing. The first night was the one that's on tonight was sold out, and the one you were at was last night was the second episode. So back-to-back episodes, and that's happening quite a lot. Even in the Adelphi Theatre, before I came here, it was in the Adelphi Theatre in the West End of London. So it's
just shows the demand for this type of stuff.
Yes, but you hit the nail on the head when you opened it up. You said about, glamorising the killers. Now, that is something I have always felt strongly about. We need to remember the victims. But we should never forget the killers. We should never forget what these horrible killers have done to people, what they've done over the years. And that's a big thing. And the balance of the show you saw last night is about that. And you would see I threaded it through victims and speaking about the killers, the no-body murders, families that lose a loved one where their bodies have been destroyed and never found.
And some of the things that you'd seen along the way through your journey, mate, were just like, I felt sick actually in certain parts of it when you're talking about certain things, which we can get onto. But as a young lad, what brought you into this industry? Because I know that off the podcast I did ask you, to become a detective, is it something that, is born in you? Is it like an innate thing? Or is it something that actually, do you know what, I want to help these victims, I want to try and catch these killers, I want to do something about it? Is it a thirst for that? Or is it actually you've always been curious and you've always been open to question things, and why did that happen? What led you into the police force?
Well, I was a scientist. I was a scientist before I joined the police. I was a senior science technician in a school. I was a researcher. I was into science. I was 21 and I was a senior science technician. I was that. That was the person. That was the boss. That was me. Where was I going? And I loved the challenge. I loved the researching. So I've got an analytical researching mind. And I thought, I want a challenge. So I joined the police. So I joined what was called the old Strathclyde Police in Scotland. It was the biggest force in Scotland before it became amalgamated into Police Scotland. And I joined the police in March 1977. I remember the date in my head, the 21st of March 1977, a proud day, joined as a uniformed police officer, and very quickly, within 3 years, I was in the CID, and most of my career, 34 years in the police, has been in the CID, most of it at different ranks, moving up through ranks.
That's quick, isn't it, though? 3 years to get into the CID. Normally people are in there for years, aren't they, before they even... That's even a dream. Different career paths. And I was fortunate that I did, academically, I was... I suppose gifted academically. I've got a degree in police studies, business studies. I've got a postgraduate in forensic medicine, which I studied while I was in the police. So I was probably gifted in a way academically, but it's not about, the police need every type of person. They need every type of person. It's not about academia. Some people want to join the police to walk the streets, to help old women. I use that phrase because that's the phrase you hear across the road. And I joined the police because I wanted to make a difference. I wanted a challenge, and I certainly get a challenge throughout my career because I literally dealt with hundreds of murder investigations throughout my long career. As a 21-year-old lad joining the police, did your friends change around you? Because you hear the rumours, don't you? Like when someone joins the police force, the friends kind of fall apart and stuff like that. What were the people around you like when you joined the force? Can you remember if they changed or not at all?
No, there was no change allegiances, friends, things like that. You've got to remember when you do join the police, you're part of, which some people have got stereotype views of the police. You've got to remember that. And you've got to be careful what you do in your private life. Rightly so. It's the same with all occupations.
Of course.
But you then become part of the family, the police family. So you have lots of colleagues and you become associating with your colleagues in the police. And, one thing which I found really interesting, I'm finding it in this tour, because you saw the format last night. It's me. It's a one-man show, so to speak, speaking about the cases, looking at particular threads, no-body murders, and we have, you can't, to ask questions, it just focuses on the individual that's asking that question at a time. So you can't really do it. But they put in questions, on social media, and I monitor them, pick them up, and I go over them. And one of the ones that people always ask, the same questions you've asked me there, why did you join the police, what did you do? But then at the end we have a photo shoot where people get their picture taken with the makings of a murderer banner and me. And some people have come up to me and saying, I was thinking about joining the police, but I was a bit wary of it. but having heard you tonight, you know, I'm going to join it now. Would you recommend it? And then I've had other people that are police officers saying, I'm in the police. I've been in it 2 years. I was getting a bit sort of disillusioned by it.
Yeah, yeah.
And they say, after listening to you tonight, I'm going to stay on. And that's the thing. It's the best job in the world.
Yeah, that's it. And I think you've got to be the right type of person, though, because I think the majority of people, or there's a vast majority of people who I've spoken to who are fascinated with crime in general. I don't know what it is. It's almost like you're trying to unpick different details and things that could lead you. Like, you know, if you hear something on the news about someone went missing in your local area, instantly like, well, did I see them? Do I know someone who knows? I think everyone somewhere in us have got that kind of detective, if you know what I mean. With yourself, what was kind of the first case that you witnessed where you thought, shit, like, I'm in this now, like, I've really got to put my skills to the test? Can you remember?
There's so many, you know, you deal with so many murder cases, and it would be unfair to victims to highlight a particular case.
Well, can you remember your first murder case?
The first murder case was a stabbing in a place called Paisley.
Right,
you know,
okay.
And I was a cop, and I'm dealing with that, attending the scene of a fight and a stabbing. You know, and I was a uniformed cop, and I'm handing it over to the CID.
How did you feel when you saw that, when you got to the
It's horrible. It's horrible. And I think I mentioned that because that is a question that people ask, you know, do you feel, does it harden you to, you know, to seeing these things? The answer is definitely not. I have seen literally hundreds of murder victims and spoken to hundreds of murdered victims' families, and looking at what a person's done to another. And a phrase I say on, you know, is, why does a human being kill another human being? And that is the thing. I never get to that at all. And I've tried to understand it, and, you know, but looking at a killer the way I'm looking at you in the eyes, and then having to go and see their parents or their wife or whatever and say, your loved one was killed. And I say, why? You know, and to see how it breaks families apart, to see, you know, how the killer doesn't care most times. I find it's very difficult. And, you know, things like, you know, I know that it's perceived, you know, projected as the hard-nosed detective. You're not a hard-nosed detective. I'm a human being. And I still am. And I remember cases, I remember things clearly. I remember seeing bodies, decapitated bodies. I remember trying to, you know, it's something you will never harden yourself to. And I'll never forget my time in the police. I never forget things. It always sticks with you. But the problem is you need to try and be professional and live a normal life as well.
How does your family cope with that, though? Because surely when you've been out and you've seen someone get decapitated and you're coming home and that, how do you kind of unwind? Do you know what I mean? How does that ever leave you? Because for me, I think if I went out, I mean, I've got a little girl and a fiance, and I think if I went out and that was my job, that was my duty, and I had to attend a scene and someone was in half, I can't even imagine what I'd have to be sitting with on my own, with me thoughts, with me family around us. I don't think I'd be very pleasant to be around. How were you?
I was fine with it. I suppose I had a coping mechanism. You've got to live a normal life. I ski, you know, I do a lot of skiing and cycling and things like that. But you've got to have a coping mechanism, and it is very difficult. But PTSD, post-traumatic stress.
Do you have a bit of that?
No, I don't. I don't have it. I've never had it. I probably have had it and I didn't know. But nowadays the police are more aware of that. There's more support for people. There wasn't years ago. You know, the military, the police, the macho image. You know, it's not.
Was there ever a scenario or a case? I mean, again, I know it's your job, but was there ever a case when you actually thought, I don't think I can attend this? Like, I don't think I've physically got it in us to witness this.
I did particularly like going to post-mortem examinations, autopsies, and as I went on in the police as a senior officer, you know, other people would do that. That's something that sticks in my mind when, you know, a pathologist is doing an autopsy. That's something that just sticks in my mind, everything around that. But no, I dealt with horrible cases, and one, you know, and a question last night that was asked, which was interesting, was why do some cases make the media and other ones the media?
Yeah, that was interesting. That, like,
And the case I spoke about, and this is a case I remember when I was a DI, detective inspector, and it was a young woman, Angela Thompson, I remember her name, and it was in a place in Ayrshire, and there was a call in the afternoon that there was a girl in the garden without a head. I thought,
Fucking hell, mate.
So I went to there, and there was a young girl in a garden on a sunny day with no head, and thought, what's that? There's blood everywhere, and her boyfriend, Brian Fairney, who's now dead. Brian Fairney believed that she was the devil, stuff in her eyes that he saw, and he killed her. He cut her head off with a bottle, a beer bottle, and a clothes dryer, and then he put the head in a bag and ran away with it. It was like a sort of domestic scenario, absolute extreme violence, and I've always remember that. That made the newspapers a little bit at the time, but there's lots of cases like that.
There was the one with the cans in the hands as well.
Yes, that is something that I mentioned last night.
Aye.
Because what happened was the media report on high profile cases or particularly unusual cases, but I'm quite sure in Sunderland here in Newcastle there's loads of murders.
Yeah,
sadly there's too many murders in
Yeah.
someone's life. And they don't hit the media.
Mm-hmm.
They don't hit the media. And there was one, the one that you spoke about, it was in the East End of Glasgow, Easter House in Glasgow, a big estate in Glasgow. There was a cult, this was in the 80s, and it was money lending. And it was where vulnerable people borrow money from organised people and then they have to pay it back. But they had this scheme to do with alcoholics in the area that drunk a particular strong lager. I won't advertise it on this.
Okay.
A particular strong lager, and they would get the money they would get paid in that from the moneylenders, and they handed over their pension slips. And one guy hadn't paid the money, so he's found dead in the house, sitting there, slashed open, and 2 cans of this particular lager were on his either side of him. It was money lending. No one would speak out. People had been borrowing money from people, the money lenders, to buy their children's shoes. They add 50% interest on and more of that. It still goes on, but in a different way. They don't have the benefits books. We never solved that. That was unresolved. Jackie Marshall was his name. And the people they get convicted of money lending. But we could never prove who killed him. It was a message to them. It's a poor individual, a poor vulnerable guy that is sitting, that's found, slashed open. People don't remember him.
What stage does it happen? When you say like it was never resolved, what has to happen for a case to be right? Okay, we're going to give up on this one.
We don't give up. Never give up.
So
never
what makes you say the case was never resolved?
It was never. No one was caught for it.
Right,
no one was caught for it. So no one was caught for it. So it comes to a time when you followed all the leads up. You followed all the evidence that's possible there. But sadly, you can follow up every line of inquiry and you don't get anywhere. But they're there, and I spoke about it last night about cold case units. Every unresolved murder investigation gets reviewed.
Yeah.
When new information comes to light. Mm-hmm. So, I worked in a case in 2002, I was the head of CID in Glasgow City Centre, the DCI there, and it was in May 2002, and there was a guy called Alexander Blue. He was a businessman, and he was murdered outside his house, and it became very, very complicated. He didn't die at the scene. There was lack of forensics and different things, and it became very complicated. So much so it was never resolved. There was finance, there was everything around his life. It was never resolved, didn't solve it. But the thing that I have in my mind is, that was a case we never solved. I hope someday that we will find out who killed. There was lots of angles with it. But what we have in the police in the UK that they don't have in Spain, where I'm dealing with other cases here, they have a system of review. So that case, the unresolved case, has been reviewed lots of times by other senior officers applying new technology, things like that. So we have that in the UK.
Yeah,
they do look at it. We go back, look at it. And I mentioned last night, cold case reviews. I spoke about the Whitechapel murders, and the Jack the Ripper murders, these things. They're on the Metropolitan Police books as unsolved. And they can go back and look at them. That's what happens in this country. We have a system.
Yeah,
where they revisit it. You know, in some cases, because there's no DNA, there's no potential lines. But the thing I always say, and I said it when I was running the Peter Tobin case and looking for other people, the passage of time should not be detrimental to the detection of crime. It shouldn't matter how long it takes to solve or to investigate or to
Of course,
get
because
the people.
there's still victims, isn't there? There's still families. There's still all that. Like, why should the time matter?
Exactly,
Do you know what I mean?
and
Even
that's
for their
what I
sake alone.
say. It shouldn't matter. And the cases that I'm involved in reviewing for the families and helping the families in Spain, Craig Mallon murdered in Lorette de Mar, and that was in Spain. That was 11 years ago.
Do you know when you're doing a case, David? Right, when you were in the force or in the CID, and you were really getting into one. Was there any cases outside of your remit where you thought, I wish I could get involved with that? Does that not happen? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it
A lot of people ask me that. People ask that. That's a question I get asked online, and people speak to me at the time when we're photographing at the end. Is there any case you wish you were involved in? I don't. I don't think there is. There's lots of cases that I was fortunate, if that is the word, fortunate to have been involved in some very, very high profile cases and complicated cases, and I think I did my bit. I tried my hardest, and it's about giving something back, and I feel I did make an impact in society over the years, but I'm still using the skills, and that's what I'm trying to do with these cases in Spain. You see the slide I put up towards the end is the life after the police. No, that's what I say, but there is. But I'm using my life, and I say, people say you retired in 2011 from the police.
Never retired.
I've left the police. I left the police in June 2011, and I wanted to think, what can I do? What else can I do? And I set up looking at reviews, and then it developed into the gap in the market to do with victims' families abroad in other cases. And the TV stuff I do stuff in the Crime Channel. I've done quite a lot of programs in the Crime Channel. You'll see them; they'll be on I've got clips of them on my YouTube channel, because I've even got a TikTok channel now. I've even got a TikTok channel called The Scottish Detective. Yeah, I'm big on Twitter. Instagram.
It's building your brand though, mate, because I've seen a lot of lawyers, solicitors, they're jumping on there, there's doctors, there's all types of people jumping on them. Why shouldn't you? At the end of the day, if you're providing a service to the world, or you can offer your help or expertise, why not leverage your brand to do that and get involved and help more people, more families, more victims?
Well, this is the world we're in.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the only way for the cases abroad where we're trying to appeal for witnesses or information, and we're appealing in different languages. Social media is the way to reach that. And I have, it's not like your podcast, but I have a podcast called Swindle Search for the Truth.
I'll pop that in the link.
Yes, we did episodes last year with the families, that, and they're actually sitting like with me speaking about their loved ones and their appeals, because we do TV documentaries for these cases, but TV documentaries are edited. This is unedited. This is the families. It's the voice for victims.
Do you know when you were so when you were a detective, David, what's the difference? Like, how are cases assigned? How does it work? So just for me, because I don't know how cases work. I'm interested in it enough to really, I want to get an understanding of, let's just say for argument's sake, there's been a murder, and it's better when you say
as I say, as Mark McManus would say, Mark McManus, the former Taggart, or DCI Jim Taggart would say, there's been a murder. Okay,
I kind of get over it.
And
how amazing that sounds.
The other night there, it was amazing, actually. In the Adelphi Theatre, I'm speaking about the introduction, and I'm speaking about there's been a murder, and I referred to Mark McManus and DCI Jim Taggart, and I looked in my eye line 3 rows back in the audience was a guy called Glenn Chandler, who created Taggart.
How amazing is that,
he was there,
people from all walks of life are coming to your stuff. But yeah, so how does it work if they say, David, we want this case to go to you, or do they say to you when you kind of, because obviously you were senior, did you get past the bigger cases, or is it up to you to sort of delegate? How does that work? Is it like, okay, serial killers now go to you? the big, you know what I mean, or the terrorism attacks or things like that? Like how does it work? Who gets assigned what?
Well, there's different types of murders, and I think I highlighted that last night. You know, there's like murders, and we should never. Sadly, they are classified as different types of murders, and they need different types of resources. And the big high-profile cases, which we category A murder investigations, it's a detective chief inspector or a detective superintendent, which I was, that run them. A lot of times you're maybe on call. You're the on-call detective super, you're on-call DCI, and you get these cases, and that's how it happens. But if there's a complexity, you know, you become involved, you've got particular skills, and I had the particular skills of dealing with complicated cases. And in the Peter Tobin case that you saw me speaking about last night, the girl, the victim, Angelica Clute, was murdered in the church, I get contacted by the Chief Constable's office because it was a high risk, because she was missing, and she was with a person who was a registered sex offender who's missing. So there's high reputational issues, but it's about your skill sets, and I had the skill sets to deal with complicated murder investigations. The Glasgow Airport terrorist attack was one that I was one of the SIOs on, in the Glasgow side of it, and that's the thing. It's about the skill sets, but you know, a lot of times it's been in the right place or the wrong place at the right time.
What's going through your head though, David? Like, you know, the Glasgow Airport attacks and stuff. I can't imagine the responsibility or the pressure if you're assigned that as a senior to basically go and sort it out.
Well,
like,
I mean, there's so many people involved in that.
But for you personally, how did you feel?
For me personally, with that, I was sitting in the house.
And with it being Glasgow as well. Do you know what I mean?
Glasgow Airport. I was sitting in the house watching TV and Sky, and I saw the things blowing up. You know, and I thought, what's that? And the next thing I know, I'm on a phone call. I was the on-call detective superintendent. I'm on a phone call. There's an instant there, but I know I'm watching television. So I'm driving to this, and I'm thinking, God, what's going on here? Everything's there. You're going to the barriers. You're going there. It was huge. I called it, the 10 years after it, I called it organised chaos. Everything's there. You go there, the military's there. The place is closed, planes are cancelled, it's a no-fly zone.
How quick were you after the attacks? How quick did you get there?
I was there within a couple of hours.
What was that like then when you got there?
It's organised chaos. Everything's fast-moving. You know, something like that, and it was only a stanchion on the bridge that saved hundreds of people getting killed. You know, a stanchion on the airport where the car hit that. And then they were throwing like flames and, you know, Molotov cocktails into people running in terror. But it's the fast moving stuff.
Is it adrenaline though?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Did you still feel fearful?
Oh yeah, you're going there. Am I doing this? What am I doing now? How am I dealing with this? You know, and I mentioned it last night about the Tobin case where I kept a notepad beside my bed and I wrote notes. You know, and woke up at night. There's an idea. And that's what you're doing. You're thinking. You're thinking. It's fast moving. But one of the things that when I joined the police, and you know, you asked me about joining the police, and I started as a uniform officer and I went to the training school and all this stuff. I could never envisaged that I'd be doing what I'm doing just now, sitting in a podcast in a hotel room in Sunderland with you, speaking about my career, standing in front of, 700 people last night, and tonight it's a sellout. There's more.
Mate, do you know
what?
what?
Adelphi Theatre in the West End of London.
It's
going to Dublin. You know, I could never have imagined what I'm doing, and I'm dealing with cases abroad. You know, this morning I'm on the phone to do a particular case we're working on. One of my colleagues, Victor's abroad, is working on a case in Spain, and I'm on the phone there and I'm dealing with this. You know, I love it. I get the buzz. For me, it's like you do. Enjoy your work.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you get the buzz. You need the challenge. You need to keep changing.
I thought I had the best job in the world, mate, and then I'm starting to
think, people say to me, the police gets a lot of bad press. There's a lot of issues come in, but there always has been. Over decades, there's been quite a lot. And you know,
I suppose there's a lot of good though, isn't there? That's the thing.
Well, that's the thing. That's interesting you say that, because, you know, we should always focus as well. You always think of the good that's done, the things that are happening, the successes. And, you know, we're not proud of some of the media headlines just now.
Even with like little things like the fire service, people say, well, they're getting paid to pull cats out of trees. But the point is, yeah, but they're getting cats out of trees. Do you get what I'm saying? That's what you have to focus on. They're still saving the cat. What we're meant to do, laugh, because do you get what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
And obviously, I would like to, congratulate you on all the success you've had, mate, because I know what you've done in your career and what you did say at the show last night, and the goodness that you've gone on to do in the world, and for the victims' families, and being there.
For me, it's about the
hundreds
victims.
of murdered people's families, do you know what I mean? And having them conversations. What's that like for you when you have to go and visit and tell them the news? Like,
well,
again,
that's the bit where what makes a killer? What makes a killer? Why do killers killing? I'm speaking about that, and why do they do it? And I go to see the family and speak to them. And I'm dealing with families in real life just now. And so in the Swindle Search for Truth podcast, the families are speaking on that podcast. You could take clips out of it, put it on YouTube with me or whatever. It helps push their appeal. The families are on that podcast speaking about the difficulties for them.
Do you take yourself out of that when you visit a family to say that the son's been murdered or shot or whichever way? And I imagine there is some horrible ways that these people are getting killed. Do you take your emotions out of it? Or do you feel like you're part of their family in a way, because it's almost your duty to help them get some kind of justice?
You can't take yourself out of it. You become personally and emotionally involved in it. A really important role in the police that is not always highlighted is the family liaison officers, the FLOs. And for me, in some big cases that I have worked on, it's the family, the experienced officers are trained how to deal with families. As a SIO, I would deal with the families, meet the families initially, but the family liaison officers are important because they feed stuff back and forward to the families, help them with it, getting through the processes. There's victims agencies in the court process, because it's not just about, sadly, it's the killing, it's about the judicial processes later on. And you see it a lot. You see families standing in the court steps making statements, and with them, beside them, is probably a family liaison officer or the senior investigating officer. So there's all sorts of roles. And one of the things, and you heard me saying it last night, is that, I liken myself in the police as a football manager. You're only as good as your team. And it's quite ironic, a football manager, because from this hotel room in Sunderland, I can see the Stadium of Light, which is a football stadium. And I think about that quote that I used last night. But you're only as good as your team. And you surround yourself in the experts, and you saw the DNA expert on the video last night. Unbelievable.
Do the families are they like, how do they view you? Are they on your side, or just because I imagine the emotions are that all over the place when someone's been murdered? Are they? Does it ever get thrown in your face almost, like tell the fuck off and all that, because it's like they're so frustrated that they feel like they've been let down by the police? Did you ever feel that side of it? Or
sometimes you get that, but to be honest with you, it depends. The families have lost a loved one.
Yeah, ultimately,
someone they want people to try. They'll do anything to try and get answers. And this is the particular in the UK, and people will say, "Oh, police aren't good," or this or that. Arguably, the police in the UK is the best policing in the world, without a doubt. And bearing in mind, I see other places, and I see like Spain, where it's judge-led. The police only do what they're told to by the judge. They don't have the same autonomy as the police have here. And that's very frustrating for British families, because it's frustrating for me too, where I'm dealing with a case, the reviews, the Kirsty Maxwell, the Craig Mallon cases, and we're looking at it and we're applying the expectations that you have from a British policing perspective. You've got to understand that other countries operate differently, and it's very difficult for families. But for families here in the UK, they've got ups and downs. They've lost a loved one. They want everything. But then there's frustrations.
Yeah.
That things might not go the way. There might be stuff in the media, and you heard me speaking about the media. You need the media. The media are powerful. You can't, as a detective, a senior detective, you don't alienate the media. And I work with the media. I've had some issues with them in the past. But the media are important, because the media have got to help in families. But families get frustrated.
And they can broadcast the case where people can appeal and come forward, etc.
Exactly. You need the media, you need the public. And you mentioned the interest that the public have in crime. Yes, they do. We just need to watch we don't have vigilantes. And that happens. There's some of that goes on. And amateur detectives, armchair sleuths, you need to be careful with that. But rightly so, people have got an interest in crime.
Did you with all the killers and stuff that have been caught, how often did you come face to face with them themselves? Were you ever in the room with the killers? Did you ever interview them?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what's that like, sitting down with someone that you know who's decapitated a young man or a young girl or whatever?
That's where you need to be professional, because you can't become, and that is the thing, that a police officer becomes so frustrated because they're not getting answers from them, not results from them, and they're so horrified by it. We're professional now.
Can you give us an example of when you've sat down in front of a killer and the conversation you've had and stuff like that?
I think,
like how are you feeling and how they were with you, and
you get different types of attitudes to it. You get the people that say no comment, right?
Mm-hmm.
No comment. Advice of my lawyer, no comment, right? And then you get the ones that admit things.
Mm-hmm.
And you cajole them there too. And nowadays, and I remember the old days in the police when there was no video recording of interviews, no audio recording, and you would make notes of the admissions. And you would go to court and they would say, my client never said that, I put it to you, he never said it. Well, they do.
Mm-hmm.
People are recorded in audio and they make admissions on it. But we've moved on quite a lot from when the senior detective, as it happened years ago, or the investigating officer would want to interview the suspects. Don't do it. As an SIO, I'll see them or whatever. We've got trained interview advisors. So there's police officers that are trained, and that's what they are, interview advisors. They go in a course how to interview someone, what questions to ask. They've got interview coordinators. If there's more than one suspect, they do that. We use psychologists. It's a different ballgame now.
Have you found, is there any kind of common themes or trends with people who kill?
People that kill, different types of killings. There's different reasons for killing.
Is there no kind of certain, when you sit down and when you've had these interviews with people or these kind of interactions, is it a case of, he's got the same trends as him, or is it literally?
You've got different types of killings. You have, like Sunderland down the pub there, you have a gang fight or something like that. You have something that happens within the confines of a house.
Okay, what about with serial killers then?
Oh, serial killers are, they have, for them, in the blip, I say they're cool, they're calculating. They can be charming, and they're controlling, and it's about power. And there's sexual motivation in most of these, and they love it. And that's how they get away with it. And you heard me saying, what does a serial killer look like?
Yeah, there's no
They look like you or I.
Yeah.
And that is the thing. And they can get away with it for so long. Some of them get away with it.
Do you know what? Again, watching, whether it's prison documentaries, whether it's true crime stories, whatever it is, you find that a lot of murderers have a lot of females who they're drawn towards murderers. Do you know the psychology behind that or anything like that?
No,
because you see that a lot. Have you noticed that?
There is a,
it's almost like they've got fans.
If you look at the number of women that were at that venue last night, there's quite a lot. It's quite a lot, but that's probably because the men are at the pub or something like that. Or last night there was Champions League games on last night, so it could have been something to do with that. But there are, there's been quite a lot of cases where women have written to serial killers and become obsessed by them. But there's women serial killers too. Joanna Denny, the Peterborough, the ditch murders with the knife. You've got Myra Hindley. And, there's women, Rosemary West. You've got people that are women serial killers too. But the fascination goes right across the ages. And I think also now right across the age groups. And I think now with social media, and podcasts are cropping up everywhere, and you've got, I'm a great believer in, put it out there about crimes and things like that, but we need to be careful.
Yeah, we don't want to glamorise anything.
You do, if I'm involved in a crime documentary, and incidentally, there's a crime documentary, two that I'm going to be involved in soon, people will see me on it. One is on Amazon Prime, and it's in the next, I think it's going to be in April or May. And that is becoming Ian Brady, the killer, the Moors Murders killer, incidentally from Scotland. And I'm on that. It's 3 episodes, and they're speaking about him. And that's going to be quite an interesting one for people to understand these killers. And the other one is When Missing Becomes Murdered. and that's a Netflix one.
Right.
And that's 2 cases, a Manchester case of Jamie Levis and another case in Scotland of a young boy that was murdered by a sex offender. So these are strong. So I take part in documentaries, true crime documentaries, because we should never forget what they've done. And TV documentaries are legal. There's legislation that makes sure they don't do this, they make sure they stick to them. Podcasts are not legal.
Open, innit?
And
Anything
that
can
is the
go on.
thing. You can have someone sitting with a camera talking about a case, and I have had that.
There's
I've
no
had
regulation. Yeah.
no,
yeah.
and I've had that, like maybe 2 people sitting with an iPhone or a phone recording, speaking about the Kirsty Maxwell case, for example, the Benidorm case, and their folks don't know anything about it. You know, so what are
But
they saying?
that's why it's important for me, David, with this podcast. I want to speak to the best in every avenue. So whether it's boxing, I want to speak to the best. Whether it's crime, I want to speak to the best. Hence why we've got you on.
I really appreciate you making contact with us,
No,
you know,
honestly,
and
mate,
asking, and good on you. I'm in Sunderland. Get it?
No,
Get me here.
it does.
Even if I hadn't been and you wanted to see me, I'd have worked it to come and see you anyway.
That's
you
a
know?
really appreciate, mate. It really is, because again, knowing that you give us your time, it's like we can help people regardless. Someone may listen to this for entertainment. Someone may listen to this. You know what? Actually, there is something in my area I know about. I'm gonna say something.
People change. Affiliations change, friendships change. So people have information about what happened to Kirsty Maxwell. There's no doubt about it. In Spain and in the UK, and Craig Mallon case in France.
With your work, your line of work, did you ever fear your own life? Now I know that's mad, but I know that obviously, basically, you caught Peter Tobin, serial killer. I can't even, like, I think if I was on a case like that, because surely he would have been aware of you. Well, he was aware of you, wasn't he?
Oh yes, absolutely.
So did you ever actually get scared for your own life outside of work? Like, if imagine this, there's a serial killer who's killed umpteen people, probably a lot more than what did he say, 48 in the end or something?
No, that was media speculation.
Media-
It
but
could have
anyway.
filled 48, it could have filled 480.
Aye.
Because the fact he targets Peter Tobin, the killer, that he killed Angelica Cluke, killed Vicky Hamilton, Dynamite Nicol, buried 2 of them in his garden in Kent, and he targets vulnerable people. He's probably killed a lot more. He definitely has killed other people, but he's a coward. I'm not. Tobin's
But that's the thing, though. Like,
coward.
I do understand, because I mean, you look at him and you think, and he is. You can tell he was a coward.
He's a guy that targets young women that are vulnerable.
But did you ever, or your family were like, David, we need to calm down here. There's a guy on the loose. No one knows where he is, and people are dying. We think it's him. Like,
no. The
and he travelled around as well, didn't he?
Did, but we didn't know. We didn't know until the team. I get the team together. We set up Anagram. It's then we find out after. So we're dealing with it retrospectively. We're dealing with the Angelica Cluke being killed in the church in Glasgow, and we're looking back in his life. We're dealing with it retrospectively. So Tobin was a coward, and he's not someone that would, frighten you or me. He looks like a coward.
Yeah.
But I have been in situations.
Have you?
People recognise me even more so now with the profile I have.
Yeah, exactly.
But most people, criminals in general, it's sad to say, but they have a respect for the people like him. Respect for what the police do about people like him. But I have,
Was any times in particular you remember where you thought that was a bit ropey,
it's more like, when you're working, when I was working in Glasgow and you were maybe involved in the other types of killings that I mentioned last night, the organised crime killings, and you're touching on that and you're investigating so-called gangsters.
Was it ever a
I've
case?
had situations where I've been in pubs, and
you?
people have recognised me and you just move, you get out of it. You've got to be aware, you've got your own personal interests,
Yeah, that's it, like.
So, but that's the thing. But as long as I remain professional and I stick by the rules, the criminals, the organised criminals, the drug dealers and the other types of organised criminals in some of the cities, they're sticking by the rules, the police are sticking by the rules. It is.
Yeah, that's
It doesn't. As long as you don't get out that, it's the boundaries of that. You've got to be careful.
With the serial killers? I know I've noticed a common trend. I mean, you did mention at your show as well, but a lot of these, we don't like to use the word trophies, but a lot of the serial killers kind of keep possessions and stuff of the victims. What's the reason behind that? What is the?
Yeah, you heard me saying that. It's called trophies, and I don't like that word because it sounds like a victory. It's souvenirs from whatever they've done. And there's lots of reasons. I'm not a psychologist, but they want to keep that because they've still got a keepsake for what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
They're keeping it there. They've got something that reminds them of the crime. You know, be a body like Dennis Nielsen, the body in the house there. You know, that it killed the various men in Muswell Hill in London, and they maybe keep some that takes some there, keeps some, reminds me of them. You know, and it's one of the things they have. They've got all sorts of fantasies and things like that, and the fantasies of killing, reenacting that. They've loved that. They've thought about it, strangling someone, raping them, killing them in a violent way. You know, and the trophies, so to speak. You know,
have you ever been working on a case where you've came close to the killer? Do you know what I mean? I don't mean in retrospect and like, oh, well, we pieced that together, like, you know, the jigsaw thing and all that type of stuff. And when he made that track and he went to that part of the country, have you ever actually been in a house where and he's been round the corner or something like that where you've just missed him?
Well, when I was, you know, more when I was operational, when I was a detective sergeant, you were a detective in the street, you were going to arrest people, you were going to people. Well, loads of times going to houses and with a warrant, a search warrant, and the person you're looking for, be it the person that shot someone dead or injured them or seriously assaulted them, stabbed them, goes out the back window. You know, of course it happens. It's of course it happens.
I kind of maybe it's just I just don't understand, because for me there's the killers, there's the crime, but then there's people like yourself who I feel like them are the guys who are fascinating, because it's almost like someone gets shot in the pub with a shot. You know he's in there with a shotgun. You're not. You're still attending the like.
Wow, the firearms thing's moved on quite a bit now.
But
it's really organised.
But when you were doing the activity you were at that time, when you were so like, it hadn't came on as what it is now. So it's like back then it was almost more risky. Again, less CCTV. There's no social media.
No, nothing like that.
I mean, interviews weren't getting recorded. Things could have been getting, you know, misconstrued left, right, and centre. So your safety's got to be dropped as well.
You did get that, and as time goes on, when police interviews been recorded, it's great, because lawyers like you say, oh, I can't believe it. My client actually admits things. They do admit things, and they do admit things. Some of them don't admit it at all. But I've been loads of things where you've been out, you've been involved in an operation, you know, particular operation, maybe a drug targeting drug dealers or something like that, years ago when I was a younger officer, and you know, I've been involved in the buzz of it, the kicking in the door with a ram it as a younger officer, things like that. It's different, and you look upon it as a challenge, challenge. But the thing is, no matter how policing's changed over the years, and I have seen it changing over the years. You know, I was in the police in the 70s. I joined 77, and it was the real old days, the Sweeney, you know, the TV detectives thing, the real old style, and then it professionalises into what we have now. But the same thing is there. It's the same intentions, is to protect the public, help victims, and catch the bad guys.
Do you have any kind of fascination with the killers?
Well, I hate them. I hate people that kill. I don't try and understand it. I'm sorry.
Do you know?
It's about
that's what I mean.
for me.
And I do sense that with you. What do you feel like about the people, for instance, who come to your events? Right? How do you understand the fascination with those guys?
Absolutely. I mean, I fascination,
because I've got a curiosity as to why someone kills. I don't know where that comes from.
Well, I mean, for me, you know, I look at it. Why did they do it? Different things like that. But I don't have a fascination for these people. I don't see them. I don't hold them up there in awe. And I don't think, judging by the reactions of the people at these events, they don't either. And it's really interesting that this misconception is out there that true crime fans are people that they glamorise the killers, things like that. The reaction that I get when I speak about that, we should not over-glamorise, and we should always remember that the people, that for each of these killers, there's at least one victim. In the case of serial killers, more than that, who's someone's daughter, someone's son. People's reaction, they like the fact that I lace it with the focusing on the victims.
I think
victim focus. It's about the victims.
Yes.
And that's the thing. It's about the victims. Search for the truth about victims. I hate what killers do. I hate to see violence. I hate to read about it. I hate to have to investigate what people do, what one human being does to another. But the people that come to the makings of a murderer, are genuinely interested. There's people
Yeah,
that are
I
true
think
crime fans.
that's what I mean.
There's lots of professionals there last night.
I think
It's interesting, and I see them and they follow us on social media. They send me stuff. There's people that are professional people that work with that. There's people who've got interest in it, and
there's police
there
there, aren't
was
there?
police there last night.
Aye.
They usually don't declare it till the end, or they whisper to you. There's police there. There's former police officers, there's prison officers there. There was people from the social services. There's doctors there. There's psychiatrists. There's people that are studying. There's people that will send me a message and say, I'm studying a course, I want to do that. I'm thinking about joining the police. You've
Yeah.
confirmed to me I should join the police. And I'm proud of what I did in the police. I'm proud of what I try to do to help victims. And I'm really proud of what we've achieved with creating the makings of a murderer. And it's a company called The Entertainers from London that push that, set it up, the stage and things like that. But I'm really, I'm delighted the way it's gone since
Phenomenal,
February,
like,
and
to be fair.
it's huge. And I'm here in Sunderland 2 nights, and then tomorrow it's Llandudno in Wales, and then it's Dublin.
And I can vouch for myself that I've been to the show, and it is phenomenal. Like,
I saw you last night, and
is,
I'm sure you'll put a wee photograph of us on at the
100%,
front of it.
100%. David, do you know, I think when I said that there, I think fascination was the wrong word. I think what I meant was a curiosity. And I think, do you think that to do well at your job, you need to be curious?
Oh yeah, I'm curious. I'm naturally curious because that's what we did with when Peter Tobin, the killer, when we found Angelica Kluck. That he'd killed Angelica Kluck. He was 60 years of age. What he'd done to her, hid her under the floor in the church in Glasgow. Bound her. Battered her face, battered her head, and stabbed on the body, and put her body and everything there. And he didn't get to that age and not having killed before. So what I did was I created Operation Anagram because I was curious. What else has he done?
Yeah.
So the fascination is probably not the right word. Curious, and I was curious, and I felt that I owed it to victims, and owed it to the public that he's killed before, and that's why I set up Operation Anagram to look at his life,
Phenomenal.
his life timeline.
In a way, you've kind of revolutionised things, haven't you? Like with that operation, like it's almost like you've changed the way things have went.
Yeah, but they do now. A cold case is quite a common thing now. They do that, they look back on it. But it's looking at timeline, life timeline, and looking at his life, looking at where he was, in particular, right through his whole life. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what I did with that. I'm sad we never found out what else he's done. And he's dead. He's like Ian Brady. He's taking the secrets to the grave.
What would you say is the most harrowing case you've ever dealt with?
They're all harrowing. Every case I've dealt with is harrowing but they're all different levels of killings. But the life-defining and career-defining one was undoubtedly the Peter Tobin case. The murder of Angelica Kluck, Vicky Hamilton and Dinah McNichol that we know of. And we should always remember, and you heard me saying it last night, we should always remember the victims, and far too often we focus on the killers. But for me, the Peter Tobin, the murders that he committed, and the other stuff about him are probably the most.
Because didn't he go to prison years prior to this as well for something?
He was, he'd in Havant in 1990, which is near Portsmouth. He had raped and tried to kill 2 young girls. That was 1990. But at that time in 1990, he killed 2 other people that we found out about, Vicky Hamilton and Dinah McNichol. But he had never, when I went to the church in Glasgow, when we saw what he'd done to Angelica Kluck, he was 60 years of age. I thought, he's done this before. And
you don't just get to that age, do you? And
that's the thing, and the ferocity of it. And I'm proud of that, but I'm sad we never found out what else he's done.
Is there any cases where you think the police have failed that you know about?
There's been a lot of cases where things have not been done properly, and that happens. Fortunately, in the UK, there is more scrutiny of the police and public asking questions. And there's been a few cases where the police haven't, they've not recognised trends. I spoke about, Peter Sutcliffe. They weren't joined up. There was other things that happened then. There was other things round about. There was Fred and Rosemary West. There was cases like that going by. But there's always going. Police officers are human.
Yeah,
they can make mistakes. But when you make a mistake, it's a big mistake, and it focuses in. But fortunately, we're got a more accountable system in the UK policing, where the police are accountable for their actions.
That's it now. So it becomes a tighter operation.
And we've got big media scrutiny,
Yeah.
and the public asking questions. But you can get it where someone goes to court, they don't get convicted. That's fine. That's the court that decide it, not the police. And that's the issue. I've had it. I've worked in cases where it's gone to court and they didn't get convicted because there wasn't enough
Have you
evidence.
met any of those people, David? The Rosemary West and all these types?
No.
You
I
never-
mean, Rosemary West, no. I know all the stuff about, obviously, the Tobin one. I dealt with him and lots
Did
of
you
other
meet
killers.
Tobin in the end?
Yeah, but the interviewer does that.
Shit,
the
aye.
proactive. But I was at court and I sat at court and looked him in the eye at the court, and he looked over at me. So at the end of the day, I know everything about Tobin. He's dead. He's taken everything with him. So
Was that like when you were in court and you knew he was getting convicted and going down, and it was your work effectively, as well as the team, but
that's proud, aye.
But was it like a fuck off? I know that sounds a bit mad.
You
But
get you get highs and lows.
you must have had a good
You
meal
get highs
that
and
night.
lows, and you get highs and all investigations, and you get like, I'm on working a protracted inquiry, not just all the other ones as well. And you've been working on an unsolved murder for ages, and then you get a break. There's a witness comes forward, brilliant. There's a DNA hit. There's forensic evidence, brilliant. That's a high. And then something happens, it's a low. And you've just got to change. It's a difficult, and you've got to motivate the team. Because,
of course.
as I say, you're only as good as your team, and the team are there, and you're a leader, you're a senior officer, you're trying to lead the team, because it's the team that do the work. They interview all the people, they take the statements, they identify, and they're all highly trained as well.
It's back to the football manager thing, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
of
Police
course.
officers they're highly trained. They go through so many courses to understand. They've got different skill sets mentioned: interview advisors, family liaison officers, crime scene managers, people that manage the scenes. You've got the experts that are not police officers, like Carol Rogers, who saw the forensic scientist on the screen last night. You've got all these people that we use. It's the tools in the box to investigate criminals, and not just murders, other types of crime as well.
I really want to ask you, David, did you, throughout your career, did you ever experience any kind of imposter syndrome?
How do you mean?
Like, along my career, sometimes I'll be in a scenario where it could be like we were ringside for Floyd Mayweather, and we were doing content and stuff, and it's like he's the greatest boxer to ever have lived, arguably, and to be in that position when you're creating content as a content creator, that's the stuff you dream of as a young lad.
Yeah.
And almost when I was there, I was like, it shouldn't be me. It should be someone else. Did you ever feel that way in your career? Like when you're on the Tobin case or you're on a big case, did you ever feel like, actually, fucking hell, it should be someone different? Like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I've kind of winged it to this point.
I do sometimes waking up and say, what a life I've had, what a challenging life I've had, and I continue to do it. And I sometimes think, how did I survive this all? And that is something that I have. And I think, how did I cope with this? How did I look back? I look back at the days dealing with the fast-moving inquiries, the long hours, working like 20 hours a day, sleep in the office. And I think, how did I cope with that? I think back to, not just as a senior detective, when I was a young detective, when I was working long hours, when I was in the crime squad, surveillance, things like that, fast-moving cars, everything, fast-moving inquiries. I think to myself, how did I cope? And I look back at it, but I did. And that's the thing. And I think on it, and I say, and I remember that time when I was like the airport terrorist attack, how fast moving that was. When I was working in the Peter Tobin serial killer case, when I was working in a shooting in Glasgow, I was working all the hours of the day. You cope. It's
You've
like
had an
any
amazing
job.
life,
It's like
haven't you?
Yeah, and I look back at that, and I waking up some mornings and go, God, here's another day of challenges, but I love it. And that's what I love. I love a challenge. And, I had 34 years in the police. I've been away now for almost 12 years. And I'm still using my skills. And I love it.
Is there any cases you wish you worked on?
I don't have any cases I wish I worked on it. I just enjoy what I do. And I'm delighted that I was given the opportunity within the police, or I became involved in particular cases. There's nothing that... put it this way... because of what I do, a crime expert, I can comment in cases, I can comment in the media in cases. But what I don't do is I'm not a talking head. I don't come on like particular channels.
Just to stick your 2 cents
while there's
in.
a long, and the thing, it's a policy that I started when I left the police, because there'll be a live investigation ongoing, and TV companies will come to me, can you comment? No, my policy is I don't comment on live UK investigations, because there's a person there that's, like I was, a senior detective that's trying their hardest in the face of the public
That's
to try and do
brilliant,
it. And I don't do it. But I do, I'll do like TV programmes, things like that, to do with crime, as long as there's a balance of victims. And, for me, I had a great career.
How old are you now, David?
I'm 68.
60. You look good for 68,
so
mate.
I'm 68. And you ask how I cope, I keep myself fit. I cycle, I ski.
I was going to say, you said...
And I'm all over the country just now, keep myself fit.
I was going to say, it's hard not to keep fit doing what you've got to be fit to do what you do.
So that's one of the things that, a challenging job. The police is a challenging job. People, they'll badmouth the police. There'll be people within the police that say, I can't wait to get out to get my pension or whatever. For me, it was the best job. And I highly recommend it to anyone thinking about joining the police. Look at what I've done over the years. Look at other people, what you can do. You can achieve anything. It's so varied. It is very challenging, definitely challenging. But it's like any job. It's a profession. It's a passion. And for me, it was a great job.
It's amazing. Any regrets, David?
I don't have any regrets at all. Over the years, I look back in cases that maybe we could have done that a particular way in a particular case. But,
it is what it is.
One of these things, you move on, you work on things, you do your best. And I'm a great believer, you do your best, and the team that works for you does the best for you if you're a good leader and you get on with people. And I did.
I want to ask you one more thing. Because again, there could be killers amongst, people's areas right now. Can you spot them before they do it? Is there any way to prevent it? Or because I know you mentioned last night, like, does a killer have to kill before he stopped? And can killers be caught before they kill for the first time?
I was the head of public protection in the police, and we looked at early intervention and public protection, where a dangerous individual, is brought into a thing called MAPA, the Multi-Agency Public Protection Arrangements. And that's where, like, the police, the social services, the health board, the prison, they all sit around a table and they look at an individual and they look at risk factors and they put a risk management plan if that person's a day. That can help stop people progressing towards it.
Yeah.
But, someone impulsive, someone that's drunk, someone that just decides to, an argument or whatever, you're never going to stop that.
How
CCTV is a big thing in towns for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They see groups breaking out, maybe fighting in a big group of people, and they can the police target resources in cities there. But your serial killer people that I was talking about last night, do they have to kill before they're caught? Sadly, most times that is the case. And that was the case with Peter Tobin. That was the case with that. If it hadn't been for Angelica Klute's killing, we probably would never have known. We'd probably never have found these other ones. So the society as a whole are better at recognising unusual behaviour, early warning signs. But can we stop it? You can mitigate the risk, but you'll never prevent it.
What would you say the most common type of killing is? Is it alcohol-related killings? Is it... Do you know what I mean? Is there a way to kind of detect, like... Or is there a way to look and say, okay, most people who kill are normally intoxicated, or most people who kill... Do you know what I mean? Is there a particular...
It would be unfair to statisticize on that and say that, because it's there's alcohol related, city centre violence is a big one, the disturbances, but
across the board it would be hard.
It's very, very difficult, but fortunately the serial killer type of person isn't, it's fairly rare, and an individual, a police officer, is unlikely to investigate a serial killer in their career, thankfully.
So David, I know I've been to your show, like I said, it was phenomenal. For anyone who does listen to this and you probably still touring at the time when this does go out.
Probably
anyway.
will be,
You've
yeah.
got that many dates. I do encourage anyone to go to it. What's the future like for David Swindle?
Well, I'm working. I've got the still doing the stuff abroad. I hope there's some progress with some of these cases for the families. Even a bit more information coming forward. The show continues right through. I'm doing it right through till April 2024. I've got some other ideas that I want to hatch out, and let's see what happens. But I'm not going to stop. I'm enjoying what I do, the thrill of it, and I've got some ideas. Let's see what happens in the next year.
David, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming
Thank
on the
you for
podcast,
seeking
mate.
me out down here, Eddie.
No worries at all, mate.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thanks
Okay.
a lot.